Hey, well, praise the Lord, and welcome to another opportunity for us to deal with culture shock. I am Bishop Kim Brown. I'm grateful today to have, let me give you all the titles that come with him: comedian, husband, father, minister, youth pastor, shipbuilder. Oh my God, did I miss any?
No, that's it.
Oh,
that's
wow,
it.
man, you got like 6 titles. I'm title deficient, man. I got to get me some more.
You got a lot going on.
Yeah, you got a lot going on, man. So we're going to have to make this session quick because I'm sure you got a diaper to change, a wife to kiss, or a ship to build, or a joke to tell somewhere. But I am so excited, sir, to have Patrick with us today. Tell us what you do in the kingdom, I guess.
All right. So thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. So what I do in the kingdom, specifically for the Mount, is the youth pastor. I'm the youth pastor here, man. I enjoy what I do. I'm a minister, licensed minister in the church, and I just love what I do.
Wow. Well, guess what, y'all? Today, culture shock is always trying to talk about the issues or the things that the kingdom sometimes doesn't like talking about. Mm-hmm. One of the things, now you're going to have to educate me because, I'm the old school guy. Some of these terms, I just learned the last culture shock. I had Pastor LJ up here and I learned clap back or back clap or whatever, clap.
No cap.
Yeah, and all that. So I'm trying to get myself there. This whole cancel culture thing that's going on, for instance, I know businesses got cancel cultured when, some stuff goes down in political avenues, or you say something that offends a demographic of people.
That's right.
And then they go on social media and say, hey, don't shop here anymore. Now, I want to tweak it just a little bit today for our dialogue and talk about cancel culture from the church or the kingdom's perspective.
Okay, all right.
And you know what? I don't even know if it's just with young people. I know that's who you definitively deal with in the ministry. But I think our society, statistics say that this year, 15,000 churches are going to close in the United States of America.
Wow.
Now, there's a lot of churches in the nation, but that's still a whole lot of churches right there. And here's the other thing. I just read a study yesterday that said 60% of the churches in America are less than 100 people.
Oh, wow.
So, for everybody, a pastor that might be watching today and you got 300 people and you upset because you only got 300, please understand you're not even the average.
I'm telling you.
The average church in America has less than 100 people. So when you look at cancel culture and we bring that to the church, and now being someone that deals with young people, what do you see some of the things that the church has to become more sensitive to in order to keep the next generation, Generation Z, and generations coming behind them engaged?
So for me, I think you definitely have to include them in on whatever you have going on. So most of the time, I'll reflect back to what we just had, HBCU Sunday. I took it back to the team and I said, man, what is it about HBCU Sunday that has people running through the door? I mean, the place was packed.
Right.
And to sum it up, for me, I think the simple answer is it was different. It was spontaneous.
Wow.
It was out of the box, So I think we have to have a representation of young people. If I don't see myself, what makes me want to be a part of it? I don't even think you want me there if you don't include me in.
Right.
You know, and that's one of the things I pride myself on as far as ministry. I make sure I have the conversation with the young people. I'm like, listen, it is for y'all. Right. If you don't tell me what you like or what you want to see or what you want to do, then me as the older guy, I'm going to
come up with strategies.
I'm going to come up with some different things because that's my job.
Right.
But if you want it to look fun and innovative and attractive to young people, then you got to help me out. You got to tell me what you want to see.
What's the difference? This is an interesting question. So we're talking about cancel culture. We're really talking about the disconnect.
Okay.
What is it that is causing the younger generations, Generation Z, and we used to say millennials all the time, but now millennials are not, necessarily the generation that we are talking as much about as this Generation Z. What's the difference between different and innovation? When you look at those, because I heard you say HBCU Sunday was different. But where's the differentiator between being different and being innovative, or are they same
So
thing?
I think they almost one and the same. So innovative is cutting edge. Different is just something that, just a little different. And we don't want to go different to the point where we're scaring people.
Right.
And we mess around and cancel a culture of people.
Right.
But we do want to do things. Sometimes you could just kind of get a little close to or doing things outside of the box. If you're used to doing something one way, what is something that we could do to kind of tweak it a little bit and put a little extra on it and make it lively or, just something attractive.
Right.
Right,
absolutely. So as a youth pastor, you say you talk to the young people. What are some of the things they said?
They like a good time. This generation loves to have a good time. And one of the things that we like to show them is you can have a good time
and still be saved.
Right. See, a lot of times, even when
Bishop
I grew
Jake
up,
said something the other night. We were talking on, I think it was a Zoom, and he said he grew up in the era, and all of us did, my age and above. He said he grew up in an era when you knew the church mothers. He said he remembered the first time he had to preach in front of 200 people. And you got to understand, 200 people for him now is staff meeting.
Yeah.
But he said the first time he had to speak in front of 200 people, he was scared to death. He said, I had to walk past all the mothers board. He said, I grew up in the church where in order for you to be holy, you had to look mean.
Wow.
He said, you couldn't look holy. You couldn't be sanctified and not have that sour look. He said, so I had to walk past all the sour looks and everything where all the holy folk were sitting. And I think one of the things about culture in church is what you just said. Some kind of a way we have been cultured. So now, oh man, I don't want to lose my thought. We have been cultured that you should not be able to enjoy salvation.
Yes.
And so maybe here's the paradox. Maybe to keep from getting culture canceled, we need to cancel culture.
Yes, definitely. Because culture, it's just, that goes back to like, say for instance, religion. People have been brought up in religion and doing things a certain way.
Right.
You talk about it all the time as far as the white gloves, the sticking the finger up when walking out church. Why do we do those things?
Right.
We do it because we've seen it. So this generation nowadays, they love to ask questions. They're going to ask, why?
Right.
But why?
Right.
Okay, I understand you say I have to do, but why?
But why? Yeah.
Why do we have to do it that
Right.
way? And
Right.
if you can't come up with a why for them, they're
They're going to go Google it and find out, first of all.
Definitely.
I think one of the challenges for the body of Christ when I look at church is, and this is going to sound probably theologically inept, I think we don't fully understand how Christ operated and who Christ was. I think Christ is the ultimate cancel culture indicator in Scripture.
I believe
so
too.
When Christ comes, what he's really doing is so radical in relationship to the culture. I think, and once again, I'm not saying, you can't change the Savior, the message, the foundation of our faith.
Right.
But I think if we're not careful, we're going to end up recreating a new cultural dynamic that becomes religion with new paint on it.
Wow.
It's like we renovating religion in church.
Right.
And I'll give you an example, and I hope this comes out the way I want it to come out. One day I was sitting with the site pastors, and I know I'm old. I'm an energetic, 61-year-old, but I realize I'm 61. And when I looked around that room, the people that I think are young, they just a half step behind me. Even the site pastors that think they're young, hold on, you're not young. You're younger than the bishop, but you're not young. And I started to see we were not showing images. Here's a great revelation if a pastor's watching today. You attract what you display.
That's it. That's it.
And I'll show you how it works. You ever been shopping for a car? I'll give you an example. You drive a slingshot. I guarantee you the day after you bought your slingshot, you started seeing slingshots everywhere.
Everywhere.
Now those slingshots were there all the time, but your psyche became more sensitive to it because of what had been shown to you.
Yep.
We attract what we display.
That's good.
Whenever I see a church and they put up our leadership and all the leadership is old, what makes you think that Generation Z is going to look at that website and say there's some place for me?
Exactly.
Or a couple is going to see that there's somewhere for them, or someone of a different ethnicity. I think we've got to be open to listening, and you just tapped into something. Here is the challenge. What did you say? How did you do it? You went to them and
I had that conversation.
had a conversation. I think the reason why church is not evolving is because we are really afraid to have conversation. I think the biggest dynamic in our society right now that's causing all the dysfunction and division is people don't want to talk.
That's it.
Man, tell me why you think the way you think. What is it that makes you think this person is okay? Or, you know, when you look at whether it's almost every time there is a catastrophic shooting and the person leaves a manifesto, what do they say? Nobody was listening to me. And so now here's the problem. What do you do now that young people told you we want to have fun? I mean, the reality is I think everybody wants to have fun.
Right.
It's just that those of us that are old want to act like we don't want to have fun. Right. And young people will just tell you they do. So how do you start to
I started to implement some of the things that they say.
Okay.
You know, again, you attract what you display. So now it is you giving me what I need. You told me what you want to see. So now I have a certain amount of time before I start implementing these things before you get turned off. Right. You say, look, okay, he had that meeting for nothing. You know, so absolutely. I start to implement that stuff sooner than later so that way they can see that somebody is invested in them. Because that's another piece of it too. You know, a lot of young people are going through a lot of things these days. They want to make sure somebody is there for them. Right. They want to make sure somebody's listening. I think one of the things we talked about is, and maybe we'll talk about it in the next part of the show, is all I keep hearing from young people is they feel like the church doesn't care about them or care about the needs that are important to them. I told somebody this not too long ago. Young people they're asking, when I first started pastoring, this is the question. People would sit down with me for an interview. What did I believe about Jesus? Is he the Son of God? You know, was he born of a virgin? Generation Z not asking you any of those kind of questions. Generation Z wants to know, do y'all help in the community? That's it.
Is the church recycling? Recycling? You know, we burning up more current than probably everybody. You know, is the church trying to become green? And what we do in church so many times is say, well, we ain't changing, we ain't do that. But then we get mad when our culture is being canceled. Or, you know, we're not progressing in growth. So it's interesting. Give us real quick 2 or 3 of the things that the young people said, and then we're gonna take a break. So just have a good time. So say, for instance, they want to do things, they love to help. So we, you know, one of the things we're going to do is going to the old folks' home and going to just. Now see, y'all know, hold on. You just, see? He just used language from my generation. We're going to come back in just a minute, but he just used language in my generation, old folks' home. They did not call it the old folks' home. I promise you that. That is your grandmama. Y'all going to help the folk at the old folks' home? Look, we're going to be right back in a minute. We just want to show you so many things that are going on with KW Brown Ministries. You can go there as a fact right during the break, kwbrownministries.org. We'll be right back.
For 2 years, KW Brown Ministries has been working tirelessly to give you exactly what you need. You've asked for it. Tools for hope, tools for information, tools for inspiration. Stay tuned for October 9th, 2022.
Hey, well, welcome back. We have been having a ball. We just ended that session. I know you were about to fall out the chair because he said he's getting ready to take the young people Generation Z to the old folks home. Now,
so that's my language.
that's your language. So I just wanted to help you before your culture gets canceled. That, that might work when you're talking to your grandmother, that you went to visit Miss Maybelline at the old folks home. But when you're talking to Generation Z, they probably desire for it to be called a rehab facility or something like that. So you need to update your language. Yeah, so I think that leads us right into a new piece as well, because I think one of the things that's so important, I mean, when I start looking at these statistics, half of young people ages 13 to 25 surveyed said they don't think that religious institutions care. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that my generation has done and articulated that is not correct is that Generation Z, and let's start with the generation that I really tried to affect the most. Millennials, Generation Z, Generation X aren't driven by their faith. That's not true. I think they're not driven by religion.
Right.
But I talk to young people all the time who have a prayer life,
yes, sir,
have a devotional life, trying to live according to some mandates that they feel in their conviction, have strong convictions. They just and I use this example, my son is case in point for me. He asked me years ago, why do preachers have two voices? He said, you got the voice that if you at the football game yelling at the referee, you're not saying stuff like, now that was just a bad call right there, Mr. Ref. Right. Oh, God is not pleased with that call. He said, man, why do y'all have two voices? And I think generations coming, that's not something that they reverence. They interpret that as lack of authenticity.
Right, right.
And so let's flip it for a moment.
Okay.
When you look at where our church is, you've been here long enough, what are some of the things, and he might just say, I haven't seen you do jack, Bishop. What are some of the things you've seen us try to do to at least, because all of this is really, if we're talking about culture shock, it's really about remaining relevant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. So for us here at the Mount, I can honestly say we have made some strides towards being different, cutting edge, stuff like that. So say, for instance, let's talk about the lights, the lighting. The lighting is attractive. I know you see, and that's the thing. But the young people, they love it.
Oh man!
Lights down, but the lights.
Sunday, we sang 3 songs that I don't like. I went and stood at the pole just so I wouldn't look old. Oh. When I stand at the pole, they
I thought
feel
you were
like
feeling it.
Yeah, when I stand at the pole, they think I'm having an epiphany with God. Yeah. So I said, let me go and stand at the pole and just try to be a good pastor. I don't want to discourage the praise team, but I almost walked up on the pulpit and started saying, let's sing some Amazing Grace, y'all. Y'all kill me today.
So that's another one. The music has been updated. We singing some more up-to-date songs. So we talk about what else? The music, the lights. And also, what is something else we're doing? And I want to take credit for those things that we've done, but I think it's levels to it.
Right.
It's always some things that we can do a little bit more. Say for instance, even with Desmond being up there, to me that's a representation of a younger person. Right. So when I walk in and
we're trying to be intentional.
Okay. So exactly. So it's working because when I walk in, I see a younger person. I see me.
Right.
I see a place for myself, and not necessarily me, but young people, you know what I mean? But again, if you see older people up there all the time, it's like,
What's so amazing, though, is sometimes to see, I have a disconnect sometimes when I see a person that is the president of a corporation, for instance. Now, they're advertising and what they're trying to do in their business, they doing it. And then they'll say, but I don't want to see my church doing it. But it's like, so... I never forget, years ago, I had a young person who had gone away to school, and the young person went away to a school that's got like 20,000 students. Mm-hmm. And then when they came back, our church had swelled up or gotten so much larger. I don't know which word was the right grammar right then. So it gotten so much larger, and they came back and they said, man, I felt real uncomfortable today because church is so big now.
Wow.
And it was just amazing to me that they didn't feel uncomfortable going away to a school with 20,000 people, because I think sometimes we want to shape the things of our faith just for us. And so for me, one of the things I had to recognize is if I don't shape something for Generation Z, we're going to lose Generation Z.
That's it.
If I don't shape something, I don't want us to just be trying to shape church just for Generation Z, but I think we go to the other side where I realize this is what's so interesting for me. I realize that the people that I have discipled are my age, for the most part. I mean, I think God has blessed me to have grace to reach other generations. But for the most part, I started looking at the congregation. I'll never forget, and he and I talk about this all the time. You got to understand, Elder Wayne was the young adult.
Wow.
Elder Wayne retired colonel now. So, it's like and I think I want to hear this, because here's the big piece that I've become more intentional about. I think generations behind us intimidate us because they're different. And here's how I've had the process. So I'm dying to hear your perspective on this. When we were young, when I was the Generation Z of my day, we wouldn't lace up our sneakers. We would leave our sneakers open and let the tongue of the Converse flip out like this. And we would stick the little eyelet thing back up in the shoestring, and we basically scuffing down the street because the shoes wouldn't fit. They flopping. And so, we walking down the street. Now, we wore a belt, but we wouldn't buckle our belt. It'd just be and you wanted your belt to get to the point that it was so relaxed, it just laid out like that. When your belt was brand new, it would just kind of be sticking out like this when you left it open. So what we would have to do is soak it in water and flex it, because we wanted the belt to lay down.
Wow.
Now, our parents were saying to us the same stuff about us that I will say about Generation Z, rather than just saying every generation has done that.
And that's why I never understand older people.
Right.
Once we get to a certain age, it's like we turn everything off and forget everything that we've done.
Right.
I'm like, you do know that we had that moment too, right? Everybody.
Absolutely.
It don't matter what age you are. You had a moment when you was out here trying to be cool or doing what it is that you thought was cool.
I just talked to somebody the other day. They said these young girls out there shaking their rear end and all this kind of stuff. Now, my mom and dad's generation was flipping women over their shoulder when they were dancing, and their bloomers were showing.
Yeah.
I mean, so she won't shaking her rear end. Her dress was just flying up in the air while her friend, her date flipped her over the shoulder. Or, I think it's just interesting to see that we've got to really ask as a church. And I'm not talking about our church. I'm talking about the church, the body of Christ. Are we so married to our tradition that we're willing to sell off a generation?
And that's essentially what we're going to do.
Right.
If I don't walk in and see representation of me, we talk about passing the baton.
Right.
But who are we going to pass it
Well,
to?
man, somebody said to me the other day, thank you for not passing a cane.
That's good. Most of the time, people wait
We
till they're
passing
that
a
age.
cane, And I'll be honest, we're talking about this whole culture piece, and it's going to be interesting on the next series to talk to Sean, because I really wrestle with my son. Because I'm like, man, I'm telling you, I don't wrestle with his character and his heart and his love for God. I wrestle with different.
He got it, though.
He different. The other night, I'm introducing him to somebody major in the government. I'm booted down and all this kind of, that's how I've been raised. I got on hard-soled shoes and all this stuff. He wasn't dressed like a beggar or anything, but when he came up, I'm like, bro, you got on a sweater. I'm like, no, man, I need you to have on a necktie today. And so I just think, though, you're right. The more I study Jesus, so let me, and this is a loaded question, as a youth pastor, how radical, on a scale of 1 to 10, let's do it this way, on a scale of 1 to 10, Jesus shows up. 10 being radical, where was Jesus?
I got to give him a 9. I got to give him that. He did.
And that's crazy.
Everything.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
But what's so ridiculous is the church wants him to get like a 2.
Right.
This Jesus that we try to sell to the church. Sunday I'm ministering, this man, somebody usually go to Advent. I can't mess with Advent yet. I got to stay on this journey thing because this journey thing has turned into something that I didn't see it coming. Sunday I'm going to deal with another part of the journey. The lepers come to Jesus, ask Jesus to heal them. And Jesus says, go, show yourself. He like, no, if you want to get healed, go on this journey. And I'm like, man, wouldn't it have been so much simpler for you to just say, hey, man, okay, you healed. Right. Instead, he says, no, let me see how you handle the journey.
Yeah.
And if you handle the journey effectively, while you're on the journey, your leprosy is going to be healed.
That's it.
And I'm sitting there saying, do you know how radical it was for him to tell a leper, go show yourself to the priest? The last time I went to the priest put me out the neighborhood and told me I couldn't come back to church because I was unclean. And now you telling me go show myself again to this guy who just declared me to be unacceptable.
That's it.
The thing that's so amazing right now is I don't know how the body of Christ is missing that. I think, and you've heard me say this, Patrick, and I want to give you the last word on this. I think what my generation set up, we need rules. I never denied it. We don't need structure and systems. But I think if we're honest, we set up systems that have become religious oppression.
100%.
And so how do the old heads like me remain relevant to the generations that are coming?
Listening. Again, back to that communication piece. Opening the ear gate and listening.
Problem is, we want them to say what we want to hear.
Right. But
I'm just thinking through an old head's
listening and taking it in. I give you a prime example, man. Shout out to the chief of staff and you all for allowing the moment. We had an executive meeting in Vegas. We went to Vegas.
You know I wasn't a part of that decision.
Now, some people, and I figured you probably wasn't.
By the time I found out about that hotel rooms, and I was through. I'm like, y'all going where?
Now, most people would look at that and frown upon it. Now, what they got to go all the way there for? What's the purpose of going there? But I tell you what, I was in the room. And in that room, so much came out of that room that was out of the box because the mission was to go and see.
Oh, I've seen the plan for the year.
Yes, sir. Why are people so attracted to Vegas? Right. So I'll put that out and say to anybody, why are people drawn to your church? And if they're not, what do you need to do in order to draw the people in?
It's amazing to me how many times people will say, I want to see my church grow. I mean, this is so amazing. Sunday, the governor worshiped. Mm-hmm. And I think it ended up being, I don't know how many people did it online, but in the room were 10 people that made decisions.
Wow.
Guess what the governor said? He said the thing that impressed me was not that it was 10 people. He said it was the age of the 10 that came.
That's it.
He said, man, I was just amazed that young adults made a decision in their faith Sunday in your church. He said, because we're being told that generation is not trying to be sensitive to faith and is new age and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying new age is not out there and all that, but I think young people are searching and new age might act like they're listening better than we do, and that becomes attractive. But he said, I was just blown away at the demographic of age.
I believe that some of them have a better relationship than us.
Now, this is how we're going to end today. Because what you just said is what my son told me. My son told me his sight is guaranteed not to fail. And when he told me that, I took it as him being arrogant,
right,
Pastor LJ. But he typically is not, he too laid back to be arrogant, so he ain't arrogant. So I said, man, that sounds very presumptuous. He said, I know I'm not the best preaching site pastor. I know I'm not the most articulate site pastor. I know I'm not the best managing site pastor. He said, but I put my heart up against any of them.
Authenticity.
He said, and y'all keep forgetting, God ain't looking for how good you can preach.
That's it.
He ain't looking for how good you manage. He just wants to know, is your heart right?
People are looking for that.
And that's his whole
how
piece.
I got so caught up in, when I first came on as youth pastor, I wasn't necessarily youth pastor. My heart was in it.
Because I'm going to tell you,
my heart was in it.
The more and I know we got to go, the more I think about this, when Pastor Alvin, when I asked him to take the Peninsula Church, I said, okay, you got to tell me who your successor is. He said, Patrick. I said, I don't see that. That's what's so sad.
I didn't see it.
That's what's so sad, though. I mean, the group, that generation that has raised up in our church, I thought were great people. I didn't have any problem with their character and did they love the Lord. I was looking for old school gifts
Yep.
that were causing me to discount anointing. And what I really realize now is that the only thing God looking for is authenticity.
That's it.
Can I trust you? Man, we hope that we've helped you today. You've helped me. So if y'all didn't get yours, that's bad for y'all. We got ours. I got mine. We're going to keep trying to make sure we shock the culture into becoming all that God has ordained it to be. Look, go to kwbrownministries.org. There's so much ministry content out there that can help you. It is our desire to help the body of Christ become what God has ordained it to be. I want to thank you, Pastor Patrick.
Thank you.
Youth pastor, shipyard worker, April's husband, Caleb's daddy, chief stage comedian. Did I get them all?
That's it.
All right, until next time, we hope that church continues to change lives.